Egyptians allotted eagle to America. Centuries before Columbus had discovered America, the ancient Egyptians had written of the land where the eagle spreads its wings. So the eagle doesn't even belong to the European, but they're using the energy in the West from the prophecies and the power of what the ancient Egyptians spoke of. This article reads, there is a vast amount of evidence to indicate that the Egyptian mystics knew centuries beforehand just how the roots of civilization would divide and subdivide. On a strange map found in the archives of the mystery schools of Egypt, we find, for instance, the bear allotted to that area of land now occupied by Russia, the lion assigned to the islands constituting the British Isles. The interesting point is that the generally unknown and undiscovered so-called continent of North America was crudely indicated on their maps. 3 symbols were assigned to this continent, they being the pyramid, the obelisk, and the eagle, with its wings outspread in flight. You hear that? They're using that power. Nations in tilt over Tut's tomb. U.S. may share in treasure. Removing 15 million in treasure from Tutankhamun's tomb. That's Hotep IV. We're going to get into some very adept lessons today. Egyptians are seen above bearing trays from the tomb containing many of the smaller objects found. 15 million, and it says other priceless gems. United States claim is based on the contention that the treasures of ancient Egypt belong to the world, and that United States, as one of the leading nations of the present world, is entitled to share in them. This is colonization. This is the same thing that's happened with UK having to send back all of their Egyptian artifacts due to colonization, the Rosetta Stone, all over. But basically they're saying might is right, so we're going to take it. They're using that energy. But as you can see, the ones who are guarding the Europeans have fezzes on and turbans. Bobby Hemedel does demonstrations about him as far as him being on the hieroglyphics in the Americas. So the artifacts that are put in these European museums that's in the Americas, a lot of them could be from over here. But Rosicrusuons headed for Egypt to enact ceremony dating back 3,000 years. They're doing a ritual, but they was only able to go to Egypt in 1928. Noble Ali was already there, done had everything. After today, nobody's going to be able to say nothing about unto thee I grant or nothing. These Rosicrucians, these European mystics was on Noble Ali's heels. The ritual, which will be employed by a party of Rosicrucians, is to be patterned on ancient forms, believed to have been devised and carried on in the same room of that temple by Amen Hotep, quote-unquote son-in-law of King Tutankhamun, 1,350 years before the Christian era. Now notice they said son-in-law. They were still confused about Akhenaten's family relationships. Akhenaten's mummy had not been identified. DNA analysis did not exist. Many scholars thought Tutankhamun was a younger relative, nephew, or stepson. So newspapers and all, early Rosicrucian writers often repeated outdated assumptions. Akhenaten, Tutankhamun's father, supported by 2010 DNA analysis, which you can't even trust their DNA analysis, especially in subject matters regarding this. Tutankhamun reversed Akhenaten's religious reforms after Akhenaten's death. Why this matters? The 1928 Rosicrucians ritual was performed in the burial areas tied directly to Akhenaten's bloodline. The Unto Thee I Grant manuscripts referencing Akhenaten, which we're going to get into, because in Unto Thee I Grant, it states that those manuscripts came from Tibetan temples, and those Tibetan monks admit within the Unto Thee I Grant that all of these manuscripts originally came from Egypt, and a lot of them came from Amen Hotep. Again, the one that brought back the one supreme creator. So they didn't even have the pure doctrine. Noble Ali was the Egyptian adept. We're going to get into that. The ritual in the temple of Karnak will be part of an initiation ceremony and is one of the principal objectives of the tour. The order claims as its founder Amen Hotep. The famous King Tut is declared by the order's historian to have married into Amen Hotep's family and got possession of the throne. One of Amen Hotep's teaching was a belief in a single deity. So is this an initiation that Drew Ali did, but they're just doing it in a generic form? whereas it is set forth against Tut. He was a backslider from the faith and reestablished the ancient priesthood in conjunction with the Egyptian Exploration Society of London. The Rosicrucian order has provided costumes and equipment of considerable antiquity for this temple ceremony. But Noble Drew Ali done been there. He done had the mental. He done had it in his mental. But as you can see, they're doing rituals within the tomb. Within the tombs. Only a Mexim Almanac brings this to you. But it got me thinking yesterday. If one of these people got a phone call 3 a.m. in the morning, these people that are claiming to be authority, and they received the message that, hey, someone's at the graveyard digging up your grandmother, they would send police out there. They would put cuffs on them and criminal and all this. But these people was openly. But again, you seen the images. There was fezzes and turbans around. But that doesn't make it right. So during my studies, I found this as far as the Hittite double-headed eagle, which the Scottish Rite used the energy from that. But again, the Egyptian mystics we got to go back to that where the clip is speaking about how each nation was given symbols. But they used the energy. The International Rosicrucian Brotherhood, an article written by the Supreme Secretary of the order, asserts that archaeologists discovered ancient writings outlining a system of symbolism to govern the nations and continents of the world. 12 figures in the extreme rear are in the acts of running. They have conical caps, but different from the scepter-bearing kings, and they have fezzes on, if we may so call them. At the front, in the grand tableau, these figures we may take to be common soldiers. It is, however, a procession of female figures to the right of a scepter in the rock gallery to which the principal interest belongs. Each of these figures has what has been called a baton or stick. And that's going to get into the other demonstrations we're going to do later with Noble Drew Ali in Havana and Mexico. The clipping that he received a cane and a governor's flag. In Mexico, there's a ceremony called Demando, where you give the one with authority the cane. But that's a totally different story, but it ties into this. Now let's get into the dicing. I'm not going to let Levi Dowling rest neither, because he's sitting here saying he was able to access the Akashic records, write 100 pages of exact statements, narrations, but within his own Aquarian Gospel magazines 2 years later, he's showing a pale-skinned figure of Yehoshua with long stringy hair. I'm not going to let him ride. Man knows not by being told. I do not feel that he accessed any Akashic records, and we're going to go through why with Nicholos Notiivich, the old dusty High German book that Noble Drew Ali had. I have a previous demonstration on the Cornish Temple going more in depth about the old dusty High German book. Ali and the true Egyptian sources versus the European imitators. For too long, Europeans in America, colonial settlers 3,000 miles away from their own home, have wrapped themselves in symbols they did not create, invoking powers that were never meant for them, and retelling prophecies that do not speak of them. And today we are going to set that record straight. The eagle prophecy and who it really speaks of. Let's begin with the prophecy in the Egyptian manuscripts. The prophecy of the eagle rising in the west. The newspaper clipping. The Rosicrucians in Egypt, early 1900s, hearing from Egyptian priests about a coming eagle in the west. What most never catch in the crucial point. The prophecy was never about Europeans. Yes, Europeans sit in the west geographically, but Europe itself is not the west. The ones that are called Americans today are actually European colonies not indigenous to the soil. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said it plainly, and no preacher, mystic, mason, or Rosicrucian can overturn it. When Europeans have gone home 3,000 miles away and must take on water, once they go back home, land will again bring forth fruit, more abundant, and the mountains of gold will be revealed to the Moors. So the eagle prophecy was about the ancient power rising for the Moors, not the European colonizers, who borrowed, stole, and misrepresented symbols. And now we see the U.S. government, European in bloodline, colonial in origin, using the Egyptian eagle, the crest, the pyramid, eye, even the double-headed eagle, which traces back to the Hittites. They wear the symbols of the West, but they are not the heirs of the West. They are the ones holding the land hostage. In the newspaper clippings from the 1920s, the U.S. declared that it had a right to take 15+ million Mizunas from the tombs because they are one of the strongest quote-unquote nations, as if might makes right. That alone shows the colonial mind not true heirs of any prophecy. Meanwhile, Moorish adepts like Taj Tariq Bey speak of of King Tut's name appearing as Kentucky on this side. Bobby Hemmett Ale speaks of artifacts and inscriptions in the Grand Canyon, referencing Amen Hotep, long before Europeans knew what they were looking at. The Adepts knew because the secrets of Egypt were tied to the Western Hemisphere long before a ship from Europe ever appeared on the horizon. The Rosicrusuons unto thee I grant, in their own admission. Now we move to the Rosicrucians. Their book, Unto Thee I Grant, has been used by people in the West to claim Prophet Notiivich Ali copied them. But here's the truth from their own publication. The Tibetan monks told the Rosicrucian these manuscripts originally came from Egypt, not Tibet, not some European mystical order, and the monks said these teachings went out from Egypt, traveled through the world, and eventually reached Tibet, long after their original form. So Rosicrucians were working with late copies of copies of copies, watered down fragments that drifted into the Himalayan monasteries, while Prophet Notiivich Ali was trained directly as an Egyptian adept in the original stream, not the diluted branches. And then there's another fact Rosicrucians cannot escape. They did not even get to Egypt until January 1928. And it says 7th, 8th, and 9th was the dates. I even have the newspaper clipping announcing their travel preparations. Ali had already published the Moorish Quran, the questionnaire, years earlier, so any claim that took from them is historically impossible. They had just arrived to begin ceremonies and research in Egypt. Ali already had the doctrine. But also, Unto Thee I Grant is 1925. Grand Sheikh has in the museum the Moorish Quran from 1926. And then it went to Moorish Science Temple of America. So how do you know there wasn't an old Canaanite Quran? How do you know that? Just because Grand Sheikh has the 1926, that don't mean that's the first issued, but that's the earliest one that I know of. You have to face the facts. There is no coincidence. That man's able to be a custodian of a divine manuscript, and you can only obtain it two ways, either by theft or being honorable in acquiring it. And if you acquire it, then that means that the destiny was put upon you to be the custodian. Anywhere in the world that will be honored, the European priesthood, licensed by the state, not initiated by adepts. What the Rosicrucians had and what modern clergy in the West have is like a preacher standing before the congregation saying, by the power vested in me by the state, not by initiation, not by adepts, not by priests of the lands where the manuscripts originated, the Tibetan fragments they brought back were echoes of Egypt, and the monks themselves admitted it. Yes, Europeans presented themselves as the custodians of wisdom they never originated and never mastered. The Lost Years of Jesus and the Nicholos Notiivich controversy. Now we go to Nicholos Notiivich, his claim that he discovered the Lost Years of Jesus in a Tibetan monastery in 1886. You hear that? So while Notiivich Ali was exiting the gate into this realm, Nicholos Notiivich was exiting again a Tibetan temple with Lost Years of Jesus, but it's the watered down version that spread from Egypt and then ended up in Tibet. But as far as say Notiivich Ali got confronted about the Dowling book with his, the only other Lost Years of Jesus was that German book from Notiivich, but it was the watered down, and it says come from Egypt with the Unto Thee I Grant, so that was over with. Remember, Notiivich Ali said held back from the outside world, and now the keys have been loosened. And there is a deeper layer. 1886 is exactly again when Notiivich was in Tibet, and what else happened in 1886. Prophet Notiivich Ali was born in full life. Those timelines colliding is no coincidence. Notiivich recorded the same location points in Jesus' travels that appear later in Rosicrucian works. Dowlings' Aquarian Gospel, which is where he got his from, was this Notiivich, and the teachings held by Notiivich Ali, whom brought the pure one. But the wording is different in every single version because they were all touching different layers of the same ancient source. The German connection in the mysterious book Ali had. There is an oral tradition among the Moors. Prophet Notiivich Ali had an old German book, dusty and ancient, that he needed someone to translate. To this day, no Moorish historian explains it clearly, but here's what we know. Notiivich's Lost Years of Jesus was published in French in the 1890s. It was also published in German. It was not translated into English until 1926, and Dowling passed like 1911. So he very well went into this German book, pulled it out knowing it wasn't published in English, and then acted like he had some mysticism. Dowling publishing the Aquarian Gospel in 1908, 18 years before the English version of Notiivich existed. So where did Dowling get his details of Jesus in India and Tibet? He claims Akashic records, but in his own magazine, the research, like I said, shows he printed images of Jesus with pale skin. No adept with spiritual sight would ever mistake bronze skin for pale skin. If you cannot even see the skin tone of the prophet, Notiivich Ali said, take a good look at my face so that you know it's me. You are not reading the Akashic records. Someone with true metaphysical sight would never draw a Caucasian Jesus. I have also posted already Asiatic mystics who put in advertisements in the back of his magazines, Asiatic mystics, Asiatic herbalist healers, and we can keep the wheels spinning on and on. There's things I'm going to remember later I wish I put in this demonstration, because again, we can keep the wheels spinning on and on, just thinking, trying to formulate. I have found keys about Prophet Notiivich Ali, that has set me in the corner, humbled me a lot. Look, when you have a problem in life and you look in the Quran for that specific chapter that fits exactly what's going on with you, like the prophet planned, and you're living it because you're looking within that for the resolve, and you always find the peace because you can look right to where you're having the problem. Divine honors to Prophet Notiivich Ali indeed.